Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, August 26, 2025. These are the four things you need to know this afternoon. Let's dive in. Up first, reports reveal that the Chinese espionage campaign dubbed Salt Typhoon breached over 80 countries, including vital U.S. telecom infrastructure. The FBI says hackers accessed millions of call logs, infiltrated systems used for court-ordered wiretaps, and compromised providers such as Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. This is among the most significant cyber espionage operations in U.S. history and global history. These breaches allowed access to metadata and, in some instances, actual communications of U.S. officials and citizens, including presidential and intelligence conversations. The sober takeaway is that China isn't just a geopolitical rival, it's embedding itself into the digital arteries of Western democracy. Telecom is the backbone of government, commerce, and civilian life. When an adversary quietly taps it, their access is not just a spy operation, it's infrastructure warfare. If we don't treat China as an active enemy in cyberspace, we're asleep at the switch. Defensive investments, zero trust architecture, private sector partnerships, retaliatory capabilities, these are not optional. Our values and our safety depend on out-hustling them, not appeasing them through half measures. 80 countries were affected, many of them key American allies. Speaking of an American ally, Denmark has now formally summoned the U.S. envoy in Copenhagen amid allegations of, an American influence operation in Greenland to try to persuade the people of Greenland that they may want to actually come to the United States. Intelligence reports say at least 3 Americans with ties to President Trump attempted to stoke separatist sentiment in Greenland and favorable for a U.S.-friendly path, including independence or closer ties to Washington. Greenland remains strategically vital, a resource-rich Arctic outpost with growing autonomy, tight cultural bonds to Denmark. Despite that autonomy, the move risks undermining the balance. U.S. diplomacy's got to be principled, not manipulative. If Greenland's going to explore independence, it should be driven by its own people's genuine will, not shadow campaigns or backroom plotting. Allies need to be allies, not conquest targets. This was so dumb. Up next, tariffs on India. Well, we're punishing a partner that we won on the world stage. U.S. tariffs on Indian goods jumped to 50% today, doubling earlier measures, and explicitly are tied to New Delhi's continued imports of discounted Russian crude. The administration argues correctly India is indirectly helping bankroll Moscow's war effort. Trade officials in Delhi warned the duties threaten exports, jobs, and a relationship that both countries once touted as central to balancing China. Analysts peg the potential export hit in the tens of billions. Labor-heavy industries, textiles, gyms, leather, they'll feel it first. Now, there are trade-offs we need to be honest about. It's reasonable to pressure buyers of Russian oil. Sanctions regimes only work if the big players feel friction. But hammering India, democratic counterweight we need in the Indo-Pacific, could prove self-defeating. The tariffs risk driving Indian supply chains towards people like China. Beijing would love to have the Indian business, passing costs back to U.S. consumers and firms that rely on Indian inputs, shrinking U.S. influence right as Washington seeks tighter tech and defense alignment with Delhi to combat China. There's a smarter way to apply incentives, energy diplomacy. If the U.S. wants India to pivot off Russian barrels, help replace it. Long-term LNG contracts, accelerated crude exports, financing for port and pipeline upgrades that make non-Russian supply dependable. Pair that with targeted sanctions on specific Russian entities instead of tariffs that clobber Chinese factories and American buyers alike. Strategy beats symbolism. Up next, the D.C. case that became a punchline and a stress test for prosecutorial judgment. A federal grand jury declined to indict Sean Charles Dunn, the former Justice Department employee, accused of throwing a wrapped sub sandwich at a federal officer amid the Capitol's newly federalized crime crackdown. Video of the incident went viral. Dunn was arrested. He was fired. He was charged with felony assault on a federal officer. Prosecutors can still pursue a misdemeanor count. Doesn't require a grand jury, but the felony door has been closed, at least for now, by the federal grand jury. The White House has showcased D.C. arrests as proof that a tough-on-crime surge restores order, but courts and grand juries have started pushing back where charges look amped up for effect. They've rejected multiple high-profile felony bids and questioned tactics about the arrests and searches. Even judges sympathetic to Trump on this issue have warned that overreach erodes legitimacy. Law and order only works if lawful and proportional. Serious crimes deserve serious consequences, but not every ugly, disrespectful act amounts to a federal felony. When prosecutors swing for maximum charges on marginal facts, they risk losing the public and the case. We got to, build the case for order, and that rests on credibility. That means using discretion, reserving the heft of federal felonies for conduct that truly threatens officers and the public, and letting misdemeanors be misdemeanors. The grand jury wanted to send a message. Keep in mind, the federal grand juries in D.C., they're not opposed to the indictments, and they're not opposed to the felonies. But in this case, they felt like the charges outweighed what actually happened. Finally, today, it's another day we've got to be reminded that there's real evil in the world. In Minnesota, families are mourning the loss of children at the hands of a monster. The monster, a man who identified as a woman, barricaded the children in a Catholic church and opened fire through the windows. This is yet another attack of a transgender activist on Christian kids. Our society lacks the ability to have a real conversation on the issue because our society has become completely political. We've allowed politics into every sphere of society. Both the right and the left worship at the altar of politics. They worship the political idols, and so they want political solutions to spiritual problems. They give lip service to God, and they've cut him out of the equation. Today we're confronted with a real evil targeting the children of God, and we need to remember there's a role for prayer in the church in solving this. And all of us tonight need to be in prayer for the victims and their families, and the families even of the shooter. Those are the four things you need to know this afternoon. I'm Eric Erickson. Have a great rest of the day. Stay grounded. Stay faithful. Please, please put faith above politics and keep the faith.